We are in movie mode. Thank you so much for joining us yet again for the first time. I'm Ryan Snelling.
I'm Austin Burke.
And we're pumped. We're here to chat all things Furiosa with you. The front portion of this will be entirely spoiler-free, so it's all right if you haven't seen the film yet. We'll eventually take an ad break for the podcast listeners, especially since we're working on getting YouTube monetized. But after the ad break, we will discuss spoilers. It's not like a spoilerific kind of movie, I don't think, but it'll at least free up the conversation more and be more fitting for people who have seen it. So you will get an extra 15 minutes of this podcast if you are a patron. So go to patreon.com/movie mode pod. It gets you an extra 15 minutes. Austin, have you shaken your nerves about this whole podcasting thing? Are you glad that we are not TikToking this?
I should be used to this because I like to talk. You can ask my wife. You can ask anybody that ask Ryan. I talk his ear off probably. But it's weird though, man, because I'm used to YouTube. I'm used to stopping and starting and jump cutting and then the TikToks, and you got to fit it all in 60 seconds. And now I got all the time in the world, Ryan. So we can talk about anything today, man. I'm so excited. You look so good today, Ryan.
I wasn't prepared. I was already thinking about the next thing I was going to say, and I didn't expect to get that compliment. Thank you so much. I mean, my mode, my gear with podcasting, Jay Williams did this to me at Sight and Sound. We just stopped caring about editing, like at all. We just we would sit down, we would record however long we needed to record. Sometimes it'd be 3 hours. And then we just throw it up and we wouldn't care. And it's crazy, too, because if you guys have been paying attention to my YouTube channel, thank you if you have. But those watch-alongs, man, it's the most tedious. It's so anti-me to do those videos. So I have to recalibrate. And it's a whole new skill set. And anyway, it's not that interesting. But we know how to do this, dude. You know, it was like 5 years ago. Like almost to the month where I was prepping to start Schmoes Know, and I was talking to you about clicking and streaming. Can you believe that?
That's crazy. Yeah, I can't believe. Yeah, I guess it has, because I was fresh into my marriage, fresh into my YouTube full-time venture. I was a spry young man, and now I'm just, I'm home alone all the time and more of a Debbie Downer. But I have a daughter now. The way that things have changed, Ryan, for both of us, man. You moved all the way on the other side of the country, and now you're back in Kentucky. So you've had a journey, man. It's been crazy.
It's like a Mad Max movie. You go to one place just to turn right back around.
Yeah, literally. That's literally what you did. Yeah, Fury Road. Man.
That's right. Great. When I realized there wasn't a green place, I just went back home and realized where I was better.
You went to the desert landscape and you came back to, I would say, the green place. The sort of the green place, a little bit. The bluegrass.
Yeah.
There you go.
The green place was where I was from all along, or I don't know, whatever.
You found yourself.
That's right. So you might not know this either, but 2024 marks almost 10 years that I've been podcasting. And I don't bring that up to talk about my podcasting venture, but I will say I've been around long enough to have covered Mad Max Fury Road on Film Beef, which was my first ever podcast. So that's kind of where I thought we'd start here. I want to hear, because we haven't talked about this at all.
No.
I want to hear like what your relationship is with the Mad Max franchise and specifically Fury Road.
I've always been into Mad Max as a character. I thought Road Warrior #2 was really impressive. I mean, the way that it just changed completely from the first movie to the second movie, because the first one's kind of post-apocalyptic, but not really. You're just kind of in a group, a town full of crazy people. But the second movie, you really lean into that. And that's the first time we see that world. And then the third film, which I often kind of forget about, I think it's got like Tina Turner in it. It's got a bunch of weird things that felt kind of outlandish, like some of the characters in Fury Road, but it didn't really keep a cohesive narrative for me. So still somewhat enjoyable. Didn't love it. Didn't think anything of it. And I saw all of those movies my freshman year of college, I believe, which was right before Fury Road came out, because I'm like, we've got to get prepped here. And then Fury
Yeah.
Road comes out and feels nothing like the other Mad Max films, like at all. I know you recast with Tom Hardy and you're kind of spawning off into a completely different world, but it felt like Miller was out on just he had an idea that he was going to change the game when it came to action. You could tell that there was a plan here. And he said, I want to shoot a lot of this practically. I want to go all in on some of the craziest stunt work you've ever seen. And I want to make Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, I want to make them hate each other. And they did, apparently, behind the scenes. And so, and you imagine shooting in that setting, and even Furiosa, which they shot a little bit in that setting, not all of it, but you imagine how crazy that would make you, because not only are you witnessing some of this stunt work by these amazing stuntmen and women, Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, they did a lot of stunts in that film, but you see that translate. And that's what I was so enamored by with Fury Road. I'm like, this feels real. As crazy as the characters are, as insane as Nicholas Hoult is in that film, it feels as grounded as any post-apocalyptic action movie I've ever seen. And so I was locked in the entire time watching, and I had a couple of friends who were very hesitant, like, it seems a little crazy. I'm like, it is, but you have to embrace the crazy. If you can embrace the crazy, you're going to love it. Sure enough, they loved it. And now, almost 10 years later, it's remembered as one of the greatest action movies of that decade. And so I think it did its job, man. I love it. What about you? Do you love it on that level, like 10 out of 10 masterpiece? Because that's where I'm at.
I think that I probably do, but everything that you just described as far as your relationship to this, I pretty much have the exact opposite experience.
Ooh.
So I have not seen any of the Mel Gibson Mad Max movies. Fury Road was the first one. Okay, so guys, let's relax. Okay, so you're gonna learn this. You're gonna learn that I really appreciate going into certain franchises, certain movies without having the history, because I don't always, it doesn't make me feel good all the time when people who love these sort of retro franchises, older franchises, they go into how Hollywood's updated them, made them new, and they complain. And I'm not saying that they're wrong and that I don't have empathy for that, but if I can avoid it by just introducing myself to the modern movie, because the modern movie's like the one I have to live with more. Like, I have to live with Fury Road more than I had to live with Mad Max, because I wasn't even alive when it came out. So I like to embrace that mentality, and that's what I did with Fury Road. I didn't have anybody in my life that was cheerleading Mad Max, and so it was really just like the big movie that I saw that weekend because I was podcasting at the time. So I remember Slash Film. I read a lot of Slash Film back in the day, and they were like cheerleading Fury Road, maybe 2 years before the movie eventually came out. So I was hearing a lot about it. My theatrical experience with Fury Road was not great. I went to sort of a small rinky-dink theater in my hometown. It wasn't a Regal. It wasn't a Cinemark. I didn't have amazing sound. I didn't have a big screen. So the presentation was a little dull. And I walked out of the movie just kind of being like, that was cool. And I did not respond to it with the level of adoration that I have sitting here today for it. It was something that I had to find appreciation for over time. And so when I talked about it on Film Beef all those years ago, I couldn't help it. My experience was bad, so I just didn't relate to it in the best way. And it might be one of my biggest misfires of all time in terms of just my, like, I misfired my take on Nightcrawler, Mad Max Fury Road. Like, those takes did not age well. But now Fury Road is, look, I hope it's not reversed here, but it is reversed. So this is my 4K Steelbook that I got. It's in pristine condition. So anyway, I got this a few months ago, and when I get 4K steelbooks, I usually just get them and I admire them from my recliner, but I don't always pop them in like day of. Like there's still
Mhm.
steel books that I have on the shelf that have been there for a year that I haven't watched. Fury Road, and I'm wrapping up, I promise.
No, you're
Fury
fine, man.
Road, I received that steel book and popped it in immediately. And but I've seen the movie probably about 5 or 6 times now,
Yeah.
and I am very fond of it, and I do think it's one of the best blockbusters I've ever seen.
Well, that's my thing too. Is I don't think I actually started out masterpiece. I definitely started out 9 out of 10
Mm,
top 10 movie of that year. It was, I believe, in right outside my top five or in there. And now it's my number one movie of that year. And now it's
yeah.
in my top 50 films of all time. And now it's grown and it's cool because it's one of those movies that you can watch and I think appreciate. Like I didn't appreciate all of that meticulous stunt work the first time I watched it. But the more
Mm,
you watch it and the more you see what some of these background characters are doing, and you hear the stories about Theron and Tom Hardy on set, and you see where a lot of their careers have come. I think that's cool when you look at a movie like this. It's like Tom Hardy, yeah, he was the guy back then, but he went on to do so many other things. And you go back to his Mad Max days and you're like, man, I kind of miss this. I kind of miss leading man action star Tom Hardy because it feels like we're not getting that right now. And I miss Charlize Theron doing this type of role and coming across as such a badass. And I mean, she
yeah.
is such a badass character. And I couldn't help but to the next 5 years of her career, just look at her and say, oh, that's Furiosa because she's just
Mm,
the most badass character I've ever seen. And then to see what Holt's been able to do ever since that film. I look at Nicholas Holt as Lex Luthor, these pictures of him walking around on the streets and everybody's snapping he's bald right now and everybody's like, oh my God, that's Lex Luthor. And then I look at his
yeah.
character in this movie and I'm like, that's two different people. That doesn't even look like the same guy.
Yeah.
All right. It's insane the transformation that he did there. And so I think a reflection on the careers, I think a reflection on George Miller, and knowing that this is where he should live for me. Like everybody looks
Mm,
at George Miller and they're like, oh, he's this world class filmmaker. And I think he is with certain things, but I've seen other George Miller movies that other people respond to. I didn't. What was the one a couple years ago? 3,000 Years of Longing?
of longing, yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
skipped that. I that completely left my memory bank. I have to be reminded it exists. I
it was it was bad.
just didn't.
No, it wasn't
Yeah,
even like it falls short of expectations. No, I thought it was a bad movie. And the
I
thing
believe
is,
you.
though, it felt like we were living in that Mad Max world in the movie. Like it felt like
Oh,
he
really?
was in a yeah, like that style of filmmaking, that look, that feel to it. Except it was just a really bad story with poor characters. So I think this is where he should live. I could
Mm,
do 1,000 more Mad Max spinoffs, and every time he goes back to the well, it keeps delivering, man. And so that's where I'm at with Fury Road. Over the years, it's just grown into this masterclass movie that I've probably seen 10 times now. I just watched it again last
yeah.
week. And it's one of my wife's favorite movies. It's really cool, man. It's really cool.
It's funny you bring up Tom Hardy because I don't have that same relationship to Tom Hardy either. Like
Mm,
I'm not a Tom Hardy guy anymore. I was for a while.
yeah.
Big Lawless fan here. I support Bane, love Bane, but I'm kind of over him. He's kind of been annoying me lately, and with the grunting and the voices, and
Sure.
I don't understand him anymore. And I don't mean like comprehension. I just mean I don't understand what he's doing.
Hmm.
Warrior. I need to mention Warrior. But
Oh,
so I didn't think twice. Like, man, are we gonna see Mad Max in this film? No, I was excited to see what Furiosa was all about. But that's one of the ways that this movie is similar to Fury Road, and that
hmm.
the title character is not whose movie it is. So
No.
Mad Max Fury Road is not Mad Max's movie. It's
No.
Furiosa's.
Yeah.
Furiosa's movie is not Furiosa's. It's Dementis's.
It's Chris
It's him.
Hemsworth's movie.
It is Hemsworth, and that's not to say that like the performances and the Furiosa stuff wasn't fun, but it's the DNA of these films that you'd be mistaken if you think this is just entirely a Furiosa thing that we have going on here. So I don't know. I didn't even have Tom Hardy in the back of my mind. There was one specific shot towards the end of the film that reminded me of the opening shot of Fury Road, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Are they doing that?" But the
Mm-hmm.
timeline didn't match up at all. And anyway, but visually, it was like, "Oh, that reminded me of Hardy," but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so anyway, uh, I think that this is like a lot of other blockbusters lately, in that I kind of can't believe that this movie was made. Because I just again, going back to again, this is somebody who you're looking at here, who saw Fury Road first. I saw a freak show of a film first without any like, and I know Beyond Thunderdome, I've seen images and I know it kind of gets freaky there and it's super
Yeah,
metal. It's a very
it's weird.
metal franchise. Um, I sat down one night and just put on Mad Max. I was like, "Hey, maybe I'm gonna watch this." And I was not in the right headspace, but I watched about 20 minutes and I couldn't believe that I saw like a world that I recognize with greenery and a cop car.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait, this is Mad Max? I had that experience. I was like, this isn't Mad Max. I was watching the original saying, this isn't what this franchise is. So it was a really weird thing. And I turned it off. I was like, I'm not in the headspace. I can't deal with this. So uh, my main experience has just been these two. And I'm just like, how do studios greenlight these films? Like they're so crazy. Like, can
They're
you
weird, man.
imagine? I
Weird.
feel like no studio head could give a note on this because it's just so like singularly George Miller's freak ass vision. It's
Mm-hmm.
wild that so I'm in awe of the fact that it's even made, to be honest, is my main point.
Well, doesn't it? I like what you said there. It genuinely feels like this is George Miller from start to finish, doesn't it? It feels
Mhm.
like no one really came in and messed with this flow. No one really came in and said, "Are you going to need to change that?" And this, especially, I honestly think Furiosa feels more like a singular director's vision than Fury Road. Meaning, this is a lot of backstory and depth. This is a lot of we saw the world in Fury Road. Furiosa is building that world. Furiosa
Yeah.
is fleshing out those little moments and those little characters you saw in the background of that movie that came out 9 years ago. It's like, oh, that's cool. Who's that guy? What's this dude doing? You get a lot of those answers in Furiosa. And so when you look at the title and you're like, what more do we need to know about Furiosa? We kind of know, well, how'd she lose her arm? I guess that's kind of interesting. Well, why is she bald? I guess that's kind of interesting. But what can they do? Well, they do that. But they also give you Immortan Joe and give you some of his kids and give you an explanation of some things that happened after the water wars and some of these locations that we heard about in Fury Road that they never actually went to. We
Yeah.
go there in Furiosa. We see what it looks like. And it's like, especially after watching Fury Road earlier this week, I'm like, that's so cool because I've always wondered what that was supposed to be. I've always wondered,
Mhm.
well, if they went there, how does this work? What's the relationships with the other groups of people? You kind of find some of that out here. And I love how they integrate Hemsworth's crazy character and his crew, his wild group of demented people. They integrate that right into the story, and it flows seamlessly. Yet it still makes all the sense in the world. I'm assuming it will when I rewatch Fury Road for the 11th time. I'm assuming it's going to flow in perfectly, and it's going to make all the sense. And I feel like this was such a fleshed out and strategic screenplay that combined two movies and two worlds so perfectly. And now we may not have every single answer, like who are the crow looking people walking on the sticks in Fury Road. Still don't know that.
Yeah.
But a lot of them we have now. And
Mhm.
I think that's great. And there's going to be things, I'm sure, in this film that when we get another Mad Max movie, he's going to take those elements and do the exact same thing, right? And so what you said earlier was funny. It's like this, uh, that was Furiosa's movie. Well, Furiosa is Chris Hemsworth's movie. I mean, they're
Mhm.
going to do They're going to do a Hemsworth movie and make somebody else the same character? Like, what are they going to do next? I don't know, man, but I'm excited to find out. And I think that the world building is some of the best I've ever seen.
I think I'd be excited for another Mad Max movie for sure. I don't want to get morose, but I don't have confidence that George Miller would be directing it. Like, just
Ooh, okay.
being realistic. But
Sure.
I also think that if they did another one, they'd have to switch gears entirely, and pun unintended. But
That's
I
funny.
just think that, and I think the best way to kind of put a ribbon on this, and I do want to hear from you on this, to explain to people who haven't seen it, especially, I think we need to highlight the ways that it is and isn't like Fury Road to
Mhm.
manage expectations. So I think there was enough in this movie that is too tied to Fury Road. So if we did it again, it would just be more of the same.
Sure.
So there's sequences that still reminded me of Fury Road, and it's like, I can go either way on it because I know I'm watching a Mad Max movie, and this is what
Mhm.
Mad Max movies do. So I'm on board. But again, if we're talking another movie, I don't think it's as simple as, oh, we should just get the Hemsworth movie. But not that he wasn't great. So um, I think that this movie is quieter. I think the sound design, especially, is a little less chaotic. Because
Mhm.
when you're watching the scenes in Fury Road, I mean, there's like engines revving and stuff when they're driving across the plane. Like, it doesn't even make sense, but they're still playing like RPMs going. It's like, that's not even how cars work, but
The guitar
it's
guy playing his
nuts.
guitar the whole movie.
Yeah, that's right. And exactly. Yeah. So it's quieter. Not that it's not bombastic, it's just quieter than Fury Road, and I understand this movie better. Like, even certain characters that I have a hard time understanding in Fury Road, they're much more clear here.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, but there are similarities too. But I think the DNA of the movie, the way that this moves, saga is definitely the key word here. Where it's Fury Road is just balls out car chasing. So
Yeah, somebody else said this. I didn't say it, so I'm not going to take credit. But somebody else said Fury Road's a pure action movie. Furiosa is an adventure film. And I'm like, okay. Together, they're an action adventure, and this adventure has action, and
mhm.
that action has adventure. But that's absolutely what it is. And I like the way that they divided the film into, I want to say five parts. Five parts,
I
and
think it's 5 or 6 actually. It might
yeah,
be
and
6, but
everyone feels so distinct, right? They
mm,
they they mesh together well, but everyone feels so distinct. Now, all of it is surrounding her journey. And so I guess she technically is the title character. But there's always this man by the name of Chris Hemsworth lingering in the background that is the catalyst for her journey. And that's what I found so interesting about it is even when we go off in different directions and we get to spend a lot of time with Immortan Joe and everybody there, and you really get an idea as to what the War Boys are all about, and that
yeah.
was really cool, right? But he's always in the background and he's always lingering, and at the end of the day, and not to get there yet, but it's on a trajectory that I think we all kind of know what's coming. We just don't know how it's going to happen. And that was really cool. And allowing someone like Hemsworth to just say, I mean, and I'm sure George Miller said, hey, you're a villain. Okay. I want you to go crazy. I want you to be bombastic, but I want you to feel threatening because he was threatening. He's over the top. He's ridiculous. But there were times I'm like, I've never seen that from Hemsworth
Yeah.
ever. It's it might be his best performance. I love him
Uh,
as Thor. I love him as Thor. That's not a dynamic character. He
um,
has been, but I would say I think this is a better performance. I think this is a more clear because Thor has been inconsistent. There are individual
yeah.
movies where I like his performances. Ragnarok is a fantastic performance, right?
I would say Infinity War is his best performance.
Infinity War is amazing. I think this is better. I really do. I think there's more range on display here. And he did something I didn't think he could do. I knew he could do funny. I knew he could do Thor. I knew he could get serious when he wanted to. And sure, he can show emotion. I've never seen him like this. And so, not my
Yeah.
favorite Hemsworth character. I think this is my favorite Hemsworth performance.
I was gonna save this, but I'll just go on and ask it. is it Hemsworth's best movie?
Oh, I I mean, as a former
You a
MC.
black hat guy?
No, God, no. That movie sucked. As a former MCU junkie, I would still say I prefer Infinity War, and I love Ragnarok.
What if I said I don't count Infinity War? If I'm like, what's Hemsworth's best movie? What if none of the Marvel movies count? Oh, well, we'll count Thor, but not the ensemble films.
Then yeah, I think it is. Ragnarok's a great movie, but I think the the movie that preceded it kind of lessened the impact just a little bit. I guess preceded Infinity War and whatnot. Yeah, I would say it is because from a filmmaking standpoint, from a directing standpoint, from a story standpoint, it's just a better film than Thor Ragnarok. And Hemsworth is really at the forefront of this one. So I would say it's a uh, co with Anya Taylor-Joy, but Anya Taylor-Joy is only Furiosa for probably half of this movie because you got the little girl who plays her when she's younger. So yeah, I would consider this a Hemsworth film, and I would say it's the best I've ever seen, unless I'm forgetting something. Am I forgetting something other than Black Hat? I guess Rush is really good.
Yeah, I think Rush,
like
Cabin in the Woods are probably his top 4. Ragnarok, Furiosa. I think that'd be top 4.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny going into this film, I actually didn't feel like Hemsworth needed his stock raised a little bit because I don't know, there's just like this feeling that I have. I've never blamed Hemsworth for Love and Thunder. And I know he's come out recently and kind of taken the hit and said that, he's to blame. But it's not even that I think he's good in it. I personally haven't blamed him. So I didn't think he like really needed to come out strong in Furiosa. I was always excited to see him. Always thought he was going to crush it. He did crush it. So
yeah,
I don't know. I just don't look at him. I've always sort of blamed Taika, but also just Marvel for Love and Thunder. So, what else before we break?
Yeah, I just think the distinctions are distinct. They are two different films. That Fury Road is not really like Furiosa, but they are the same world, and you feel those similarities when you get those specific scenes. But when we're off doing some different things, the build up at the beginning, and you actually get to see some of these things in Furiosa's life, it does feel like a different movie. And I like that. I think some people are going to take issue. I need 2 Fury Roads, 3 Fury Roads. You don't need that. Let's do something different. And I like what you said earlier, Ryan. It's Miller can now maybe fast forward 50 years and do something else in this world that doesn't have to have any of the characters, It's like there is so much potential with this nuclear wasteland and all of the things they can do. And so I'm excited to see more, and I'm excited to see him maybe do something a little different from this, which would be cool.
You know what? I'm down for a sequel down the road. You know who needs to play Mad Max? Not Hardy. You know who this franchise needs?
Who?
Joel Edgerton. That's all I could think about in this movie. I was like, where is Joel Edgerton in the Mad
Hardy's
Max
brother
franchise?
in The Warrior.
That's true. But also actually Australian.
That's true.
I mean, hell, Edgerton should have played Mad Max in Fury Road. Hell, but
is that why Hemsworth was so good in this movie? Because he's just playing up that Australian accent, man. I think that could be part of it, right?
Maybe.
It's back to his roots. That wasn't good. Sorry.
All right, here's an ad. All right, we're back. If you want to get this podcast ad free, go to our Patreon, patreon.com/movie mode pod. All right, we're going to open up the floor a little bit. No holds bar. Spoilers are a go. I will say I'm surprised that Anya Taylor-Joy was in this film so little. Yeah. But also, I enjoyed the character all the same. And there was something about this that was like such like a, I don't know, like a parable, or it was like almost like biblical in a way. And I think, picking the fruit off the tree at the beginning and everything. And I just loved her story because it's like her existence meant the promise of a better world
Mm.
to people who don't deserve it.
Mm.
And I loved that idea that she was the key to this promised land. And anyway, I just really I wondered if we were ever going to go back to the green place. I kind of
Mm.
thought that maybe that's where we'd actually end up, is that we found the green place. And the fact that that could be a movie, it wasn't this movie, but I don't know, just something about that I just thought was such a good hook.
Spin-off, Ryan. That's a good go pitch that to
Starring
George
Joel
Miller.
Edgerton.
Oh god. That's actually good. I yeah, so with the combination of Fury Road and Furiosa, I do think it is a very biblical tale. You know, we start with her, and really at the end of Fury Road, the final shot that we see is her lifting up and becoming the
Mm.
one over the whatever it's called, the big place with all the people.
Citadel.
That the Citadel. Yeah, so she is now started at the bottom. Now we're here, baby. She's the girl. She's the one,
Gosh,
which is really cool. Do you like that?
not really.
It's cooler in my head. It was, but it was cool to see her literal rise to
Yeah.
power or rise to being a powerful character because
Mm.
she is a prisoner throughout most of this movie. We see her as a kid. She's wandering around. She gets held captive, and then she kind of escapes, but not really. She's still doing
But,
whatever Morton Joe
I
says.
still thought she was powerful in those instances. I mean,
Sure.
the fact that she was going through so much as a young child, I mean, I think you kind of you're introduced to just strong females in general at the beginning,
Yeah.
and not that I'm making a point. I don't really like that term, but but the fact that like her mom was awesome. Hemsworth's wife plays another awesome sniper at the beginning of the movie, and
Hmm.
so they were badass, and you could tell that because they were powerful, she was also powerful, and I just think that she had a strength is probably the better word, and that
Yes.
she was gonna die without them ever finding out where the green place actually was. So anyway,
Well, and you could tell she was that entire time she was in the cage with the guy with all the words all over him. She was kind of plotting. You could tell. She's like, I know I'm going to get my revenge. I just got to hold out and wait for the right time. And that's
yeah,
exactly, I mean, it could not have been more perfect in that way. And in that way, I think it made her. I mean, she was already probably the most interesting character in the entire saga, but she got some competition with Hemsworth in this movie. But I would still say it made her the most interesting character of this entire what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movie saga. Now it's
mm,
like the idea of what this wasteland does to people, and for her to keep her sanity the entire way through, even in Fury Road. There are times when Mad Max says, got to keep going, got to focus on the goal, got to keep moving. She always has a goal and she never lets go of that. And that's really cool. That is a fleshed out, beautifully written character that keeps the focus and we're talking spoilers, ultimately gets her revenge
right.
and then sets out on her journey to the green place. Now we know what happens in Fury Road, but the satisfying feeling that I got, Ryan, watching her toy with Hemsworth's character Immortus and just kind of say, "Hey, should I kill you quick? Should I not kill you?" And really, we don't know what she did. We just think we know what she did, and we think we know what she actually ended up doing. But I liked the ambiguous nature of that moment. Not to skip too far ahead, but that was cool. That was really cool.
Yeah, this whole movie was tough. Like it was badass. It was metal. I mean, the way that they ended was cool, and I appreciate it. I loved the action sequence that kind of led up to that. It's one final. I was about to say it's the time where they chase each other in the desert. It was like the final chase scene in the desert, but
Yeah.
also the shootout in Bullet Town was awesome.
Mm. Yeah.
I I don't know if it's the best sequence because the Fury Road chase in this movie, not the movie Fury Road, the strip of concrete Fury Road
Mhm.
chase scene in this film was awesome.
Amazing.
And I think that's probably the main thing I was sort of thinking about to my earlier point about how this movie was a little too close to the first one for us to get another one. So it was, I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
thought they added new flares to it for sure. But
Yeah.
and I feel like I could have watched that scene for another 5 minutes. I mean, it was just so creative the entire time. Um, but the bullet farm just kind of one upped it. I mean, kind of bringing the gunfight to everything really sort of
Yes.
changed the pacing of it and everything. And anyway, I just had a blast with all of the action sequences.
Yeah, they added some flair to the Fury Road sequence, the parachute guys,
Hmm.
some of those really cool uh, the way that everyone was kind of working together, the war boys on the rig and going from the rig to the smaller vehicles and the people going underneath, and you see Furiosa at the bottom there, and she's trying to maneuver her way around while not getting killed. Those are some things that we didn't see in Fury Road. And
Yeah.
obviously you got the guys on the poles and the witness me and jumping off. That's similar, but I could watch that all day. I could watch that. It doesn't matter how many times you put that in these movies, I will love it. But you're right. You start bringing a gun to these fights, not just a gun. You got a shotgun, you got a sniper. They're using the sniper rifle at the beginning. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's cool. We saw that in Fury Road, but we really get to utilize it here. And those scenes of Immortus's guys just kind of sneaking and looking around, and they just get boom blasted. And you've got the blood splatter on the camera, which was a really nice touch. That was cool, and really get to see Furiosa in action in those moments. So, and we haven't even brought up what's I know it sounds bad. What's the other guy, the guy's name that she makes friends with? I hate that I don't know his name, but
Oh, I don't either. I know who you're talking about, but
I
it's
liked him.
basically the person that she kind of learned how to
Yes.
road warrior with.
Well,
Yeah.
I was a little nervous because I'm like, I don't know if this movie needs like a love interest. I don't know if we need that, go down that route. They didn't do that, which was great.
Mm.
But there's a bond between the two that you kind of see shades of that bond she has with Max in Fury Road, which was really cool. They're kind of setting that up in a way. It's like she has to learn how to trust people. I understand this is not the setting that you need to trust people, but you have to learn that. And we
Mm.
see that relationship develop a lot better in Fury Road. But this time I thought the guy was solid and his presence was great. And she goes back for him. She didn't have to. She goes back for him, which was really cool. Shades of what they did at the beginning of the movie. Now, Ryan, I got to ask you though, the moment when she loses her arm, okay, she cuts her arm off, and then she
Yeah.
just kind of passes out in the desert. And then you see the guy standing up top, looking at her, and then she ends up back at. How did she get there, and who was that guy? Was that Max?
Right. So that's sort of what I
Was it?
alluded to at the beginning of the podcast. I was reminded of Max. I don't think it's Max, only
Okay.
because it doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you.
Because there's no when we watch Fury Road, there's no like understanding that these characters have encountered each other before, but it's like, okay, so how much time has passed? Is it possible that he stumbles upon her and doesn't recognize her or remember her, but
Uh huh.
also wouldn't she recognize him, remember him? It's like
Uh huh.
if you told me that in an interview somewhere, and guys, I haven't like dived deep into this. I mean, hell, it's Thursday night premiere, but
Yep.
if we find out tomorrow that it was Max the whole time, I'll be like, okay. But even in the movie, when there were those few moments before Hemsworth didn't put it together that he was looking at Furiosa, an older version, I was like, how do you not know?
True.
Like, I just feel like if young Furiosa played like a pivotal role in your life, even if it was
Mm-hmm.
like 10 years prior, like I wasn't, I'm not criticizing the movie. I'm just saying, would you have recognized her or not? I feel like that's a valid question. So if I'm already thinking about that with Hemsworth and Furiosa, are we gonna say that Max and Furiosa have encountered each other before and don't remember each other in Fury Road? I don't know, but it certainly reminded me of him. I mean, it's the
It did
same
me too.
shot from the damn movie. The way that he's sitting. The only thing missing was the lizard crawling and he stomps on it.
Mhm. That
So,
it Yeah, it did me too, and so it it makes me wanna go back and watch Fury Road again, like, are they alluding I mean, that's because it was a very clear, like, this is someone. Is it Max? And you look at the timeline, we skip a lot of time after that because they talk about the war between the two sides, and she finds her thing for her arm, and she's kind of grows her hair out a little bit more. Or I guess she cuts her
yeah.
hair at that point. But yeah, so time passed, and so it makes me think like if Immortus didn't recognize her after that passage of time,
Dementus is
Dementus,
Hemsworth.
Dementus, yeah,
Yeah.
Dementus. If he didn't recognize her after that passage of time, maybe Max didn't recognize her because I'm going to assume she was passed out the whole time. That
It
she
would
was so
be yeah, it would be consistent.
yeah,
Like, if you say
yes,
Hemsworth doesn't recognize Furiosa, then Max and Furiosa don't recognize it. That'd be consistent.
yes,
But as an audience member, I was like, how do you not though? So, but
yes,
this is going to be one of those things where our audience is going to know, like the Reddit heads are already going to know, or a story's going to
yeah,
come out, and so they're
oh yeah.
listening to me sound like an idiot. Um, so if I find it, all I'm saying is that, like, I don't know if I buy it, but it's not the
Mhm.
worst thing in the world if we just find out. It doesn't it doesn't add anything to me. It doesn't take away, but it doesn't add anything. It doesn't have to be Max for it to, you know.
Well, the title is a Mad Max Saga, so he needed his 3 seconds of screen time, right? That's maybe that's I don't know, but it's either way. I
Yeah.
didn't feel like, oh man, how'd she get from point A to point B and get her arm back and all that stuff? That's fine. That's fine. And
Yeah.
then I was with you on the Hemsworth, just putting that to the side, not recognizing her. I'm like, come on, dude, when's it gonna click? I get it, you're in the wasteland, but this little girl, that's there. Is there more than one little girl that could have
You
grown up and
he's got the
I
weight of the
just
world on his shoulders. He's just trying to run
sure.
Bullet Town and stop a mutiny. They're sick of him, and he's got a lot on his plate. So if he doesn't recognize her, fine. I'll
Sure.
forgive him for that.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like it was like a Marvel Star Wars moment where we see like a silhouette of a character and I'm like, oh, that's got to be that person. Like, I had to like figure it out. Like, does this make
Yeah.
sense? How old would he be? I was doing too much in my head for me to just instantly buy it. But it's
Well, and
gonna be him when we look at the internet. So
you bring up another really interesting thing, and I take no issue with the movie because of this happening at the end. But the last shot we see, where
mm,
she's sneaking all of the girls that we know onto the war rig, and so that's clearly like, boom, that's happening. I thought this movie would end, and there would still be a big passage of time for her to start looking more like Charlize Theron.
mm,
Instead, this movie ends, and she looks like Anya Taylor-Joy, and this is fine. And the movie expects us to pick up about 5 minutes later, and she looks like Charlize Theron. I'm cool with it. That's fine. In my head, before the movie started, I'm like, oh, this movie's going to end 8 years later. She's going to look more like Charlize Theron because she's going to be
yeah,
older. That's not what happened. She sneaks the girls onto the rig. Now, in Fury Road, it does say she's tried this a few times, but I'm going to assume she's tried it with different girls and not the same girls. And so those are the same girls from Fury Road.
oh
And
yeah,
so I'm assuming that's the time that we pick up with Fury Road. And so that's fine. I'm okay with it. But she goes from Anya Taylor-Joy uh, to Charlize Theron in about 5 minutes. That's all I'm saying. So it was a little
yeah,
jarring. Cool with it. I'm cool.
yeah. I didn't. It was unusual
Mhm.
because like you could just. Did you even need to end it there in the first place? Because it's just like such an
Yep.
obvious note. But
Mhm.
it was a choice. I didn't really. I'm indifferent to it.
Okay.
But it was cool. I mean, I guess maybe I'll backtrack what I said a second ago. The most like Star Warsy Marvel thing. You know how Star Wars fans watch Star Wars and they can't believe that a Star Wars character is in Star Wars? That's what I felt like watching the end of it. Or like, and then seeing a Morton Joe pop up and
Yeah.
Rictus Erectus. I was like, they're
Yeah.
in this movie? And it's like,
Oh my
yeah,
God.
this Mad Max character is in this Mad Max movie. But so there
Yeah.
were a couple of times where I was like, oh, that's cool. But
And Rictus
anyway.
looked identical. Dude,
Yeah.
how Rictus looked. Not like, has that dude aged at all? I understand makeup and all of that, but and some of the other
Yeah.
characters looked pretty close. Even a Morton Joe with a different actor, he looked
Yeah.
similar. I didn't mind the voice difference either. I thought it was kind of like a, you know how in the I guess the second movie, Fury Road, the last movie, he's kind of screaming all the time, and he sounds a
Yeah,
little bit
his
graspier.
voice is so distorted in Fury
Yes,
Road.
and it's very distorted. I thought this kind of reminded me of the moments in A New Hope where Darth Vader's just kind of talking like, "You better go after them," right? Just this very monotone, like very, and it almost felt more threatening than him
Yeah.
screaming all the time, which I liked. And so I liked the decision with the Morton Joe and then not modifying his voice because obviously it's a different actor. I just thought they handled him really well, and I found him as threatening, even though he's not as loud in this movie. So that was cool. That was really cool.
Should George Miller do Marvel?
No, I like him living in a more exotic, less contained world. We mentioned at the top of this, hey, what's the studio head going to say about this movie? What are they going to change? What's their note going to be? Well, with Marvel,
Because they don't know what it is. They're just like, sure,
yeah,
I guess
they have no clue.
we just have to do this.
But with Marvel,
we
it's
hired
like
this guy. We have to let him.
he's such a, it's his mind's so out there, but it works right for this world. What are you gonna do with Marvel that's not going to be under a strict umbrella of people telling you what to do and where not? So I feel like his style does fit some of the characters, but I don't really want him being restricted like that. So I'm cool with him staying outside of that, to be honest.
I'm not trying to say anything ageist or anything, but let me just say that when my
No, I'm with
grandfather,
you. I know where you're going.
no, I'm not going there. I'm saying something
Okay.
that's silly.
Okay.
Thinking about my grandfather at 79 and just imagining, could he come up with Fury Road? Like, isn't that so weird? That this 70-year-old man had Fury Road and Furiosa in his head. It's like, bro, how do you come up with that?
Dude, I don't understand it.
There's more imagination in that man than we both have combined. It's like, bro, George Miller rocks. That's my point.
Yeah,
Like,
he does.
I just can't imagine any, just go to a Waffle House, look at the 70-year-old you see and see if he can cook up a story like that. Just amazing stuff. I agree with you. He shouldn't go anywhere near Marvel, but if they announced him doing Thor 5, I'd be happy, but I do not need him to do it. So, hell, like I said, I don't even think he's going to direct another Mad Max, even though I would like for him to. I just think he'd probably produce. Who knows? But it took him 9 years. So it's like, how much longer is it going to take him to come up with another one? I'm sure he has a story, but to produce it and, it's just, maybe he doesn't do it.
For his age, I mean, it's got to be, this was such a taxing, just meticulous process. And it's like, at this point, I love his brain and I want him to come up with a script for a next movie. But it's like, dude, just go live. And I know he's living, but go enjoy your life, because it has to be maybe not super stressful because he loves doing it, but it has to be taking a lot out of him. And I want George Miller to just relax a little bit. Just, George, buddy, I love you, man. Come up with a story. Let somebody else direct it. It's not going to be as good, but come up with it. See what happens.
I'll push up on that a little bit, but only because, like, I think there is something to the fact that man came back to do this. I mean, he needed an 8-9 year break or whatever, but the fact that he was the one that came back, but I don't think there's any way he would have brought the other actors back. I mean, I don't think there was no way Charlize, with or without Tom Hardy, I just don't think those actors want to go through it again.
No,
because of how grueling of a process it is. So, but the fact that man at his age did, I mean, that's pretty impressive. So
Well, and we haven't really hit on this, but just the whole visual effects debacle and things like that. There were obviously some more green
mm,
screen, CGI heavy, some shots in here that we didn't necessarily see in Fury Road. And I could complain about the gritty look to Fury Road that's not there in this film because everything kind of has that smooth look to it nowadays, even a movie like Furiosa, which is kind of a bummer. But I'm cool with more green screen. And I'm cool with some of the shots that were very evidently not filmed on location in this
right.
movie because of how use the word again, taxing the process was in Fury Road and how brutal it was for the actors. And I think George Miller kind of lived through that and said, we're still going to do it. We're still going to shoot on location, but maybe we're not going to do all of it like that. And some of these really grueling shots that would have been way more grueling if they would have actually done it on location. So, and I get everyone's complaints because it is a little more green screeny, but it's not to the point to where I'm going to sit here and complain about it because I understand why they made those decisions. So
Yeah.
that's not really an issue for me. And I thought the movie looked phenomenal and the color correction and all of that and the cinematography obviously made up for some of those more green screeny shots, if you will. That's just my take.
And I'll go on and call out Fury Road has some shots I don't like. I mean, there's some stuff
Sure.
that I don't really care for, especially like at the beginning. I'm not the opening with Max running through the Citadel and being chased by. I think
Oh,
some of
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
little too kinetic and just a little
It is.
choppy, and so I'm not actually the biggest fan of the way that that's done. But yeah, very digital movie here. I don't know exactly how they made everything, but the sequel,
Mhm.
knowing what I know about now about the sequences, I mean, you can't do it any other way. I mean,
No.
the in the quarry and what was that? Bullet Town? Was the
Yeah.
quarry Bullet Town? Yeah, because the bullet raining shot. Um, that you have to do, digitally. The fact that so much of the chase was physically either like under or around the rig, the way that the
Yeah.
cameras were positioned as well, a lot more swinging in the air, like it just has to be done uh the way that it was done. Because I just can't imagine how long of a stretch of road would you have to shoot? I mean, not that you're doing point A to point B shooting in sequence, but you know what I mean? Like gassing up the truck and doing all this little, it's just way too much. So, um, and I'll just chalk it up to like some of those stylistically. Like if I just chalk it up to like this was just stylistically a choice. Some of the shots looking, I don't know, just a little too. Sometimes it wasn't cohesive. Like,
Yeah.
you can tell that it's an actor in front of a green screen plate, and so,
Yep.
I wish there was a little bit more blend to some of the shots, but, overall, I thought it looked really good. I mean, we saw it in a Cinemark XD. We might
Mhm.
we might be a little bit more particular when we watch it at home, but
Yeah. Well, it's almost a testament to this kind of movie. It's like I think of that one shot in Top Gun Maverick where Maverick's sitting on the beach and it's very clear he's in front of a green screen, but that's the only shot like that in the movie. Why do I notice that? Because the rest of the movie looks freaking flawless, okay? Furiosa is kind of the same thing. It's like most of it looks freaking flawless. Then you have a couple green screen shots in there. A
yeah.
lot of these big blockbusters are almost all green screen. And while I do, I guess, complain about it sometimes, I'm not sitting here going, oh, it's just that green screen look because it's all that. Well, with this film, with Furiosa, I think I noticed it a little bit more just because the rest of it looks outstanding, magnificent,
Yeah.
phenomenal. What you want a blockbuster to look like, right? I'll also say those kinetic shots that you're talking about, you get some of those in here where clearly he's pushing the fast forward button when everybody's getting on their bikes really quick and things
Yeah,
like
it's
that. Like,
it's the frame rate. It's the fact that the
yeah,
frame rate's jacked, so
I've actually grown to really like that. The first time I watched Mad Max, it was off-putting, but the more I watch Fury Road, I'm like, I really like this. So that's something that every time I see it, I'm like,
hmm.
it's kind of cool that George Miller's doing this because a lot of directors just won't mess with that. So I
Yeah,
kind of like it.
it's not that I necessarily dislike that approach in general, but I think it's just
Yeah,
when it applied to that sequence because the audio and the dubbing is all over the place too
it was
because
jarring.
Tom Hardy's dubbed the whole time. So it's like it's just like
Yeah,
too choppy, and so anyway. But it's
they're
not
the
like
one
I hate that too.
ADR one dubbing scene at the beginning of this movie with Furiosa's mom and the other sniper that I really noticed. But I noticed a lot in Fury Road as well. Other than that, though, I thought there was less of an ADR. I don't want to say issue because I didn't take issue with it in Fury Road, but noticeable ADR in this movie.
Yeah.
I thought there was a lot less of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big stickler for bad ADR.
Me
So
too.
that's gonna be. I can't stand a bad ADR. So I guess we'll wrap it up here. But I just watched Anyone But You for the first time
Still haven't
about a
seen
week
it.
ago.
Mhm.
So if you guys have seen it, there's a scene. Do you care if I spoil it? It's a
Not at all.
rom-com. Okay.
Yeah.
So they end up together. Okay. So there's this big sequence where Glenn Powell runs up the stairs to the Sydney Opera House. And they meet up with Sydney Sweeney. And so there's this big romantic gesture. And so
It's beautiful.
you know, I thought we never see each other again. You know, that type of dialogue, right? Glenn Powell has 2 consecutive lines outside in front of the Sydney Opera House. All of a sudden, there's a reverb on his voice, like he recorded a dub in like a church. It's the weirdest thing. So, because I listened to it in this setting, sitting at my computer, I was recording a watch along that I probably won't put out, but I had these headphones in. And so these 2 people are talking outside, and then 2 lines are like he recorded in a church basement. And it's so like, come on, guys. Come on, guys. Anyway.
To tell you, my wife
mother. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to tell you, my wife and I rewatched the second Wolverine movie, not Logan, the one where he's doing all the crazy stuff in Japan. Did she ever watch that movie? You remember Viper?
Mm-hmm.
And how every single line is dubbed? And it is, I think she is genuinely the reason why that movie is not a pretty good movie. I think it's her. It is the worst dubbing. It is the worst screen presence I've ever seen from a character. It's horrible. And obviously the dubbing doesn't help, but apparently she was so bad they had to do it. But man, when it's obvious dubbing, we also watch a lot of Chef Ramsay shows, and I can always tell he's doing a voiceover. Now he's talking there. He's doing a voiceover. He's talking there. They just make it too obvious sometimes. So I'm with you. That's one of my least favorite things in a movie. And you notice it in Fury Road quite a bit, to be honest.
Yeah. I think we are ready to wrap up here, but so I guess to put a cap in it, where does this stand with everything else you've seen this year? I mean, I think we've decided that this is in no way a disappointment by any means, and that we're championing this film and had a great time. So where are you at with it?
I'm pretty high. I haven't settled on a score yet, but I would say this is easily a top 5-6 movie of the year, and maybe a little higher. I obviously prefer Dune Part 2. I prefer Challengers. We watched Challengers together. That was great. Maybe we should do a show on that, but it's up there, man. I as a blockbuster cinematic experience, it has everything you want. Compelling lead characters, awesome action sequences, and a cool story. So I'm pretty high. What about you?
About the same. I need to watch it again, I think, to find my footing a little bit, but it's kind of neck and neck with Apes for me, because they're obviously so different. So it's like, okay, well, how are you going to compare it? I like this about Apes. I like this about Furiosa, so even though they're huge, grand prequel blockbusters, they're built a little bit differently. So I'm trying to figure out which one I prioritize, but that would be my third spot of the year. I mean, you watched way more than I do, so your list is already way more extensive, but it sounds like we're still meeting up in the middle. So
we're close. Yeah.
All right, guys. That's it. This was our first episode on the Movie Mode podcast feed. We hope you enjoyed it. If you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the podcast feed. It's available, I think, everywhere. There's a ton of distributors that I didn't even know existed when I logged in and saw where all we were at. So, but we guys know you love Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Those are the main ones. So please go subscribe, rate, and review on there as well. Again, if you're a YouTube viewer, we still appreciate you helping us out over there. If you are listening on the podcast feed, you can find the YouTube channel. The easiest way is to find our link tree or youtube.com/@moviemodepod. video portions of this will be going up. If you don't know, patreon.com/moviemodepod to get exclusive content. Go check it out. There's several tiers up, and you can pick which one fits your budget best, which one you think is going to get you the most bang for your buck, if you will. But if you subscribe to the Patreon, you're going to get another 15 minutes of us right here, right now. So we'll see you over there.